Miracle Machine is the divine invention that turns water into wine. A startup company has developed a corking idea to turn ordinary tap water into world-class wine without the need to cellar, pay through the nose, or require the Son of God to make it.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch this Easter Monday. And that great news about a miracle machine for wine lovers was swallowed by more than 600 media outlets around the world, many of whom appeared to have no idea they were being conned.
Wine connoisseurs will be happy to know a new gadget will allow them to turn water into wine. Literally.
The miracle machine was not an April Fool's Day prank, but as with so many things that sound too good to be true, it was indeed a fantasy.
Turns out such ideas are best left to the pages of the Bible when Jesus managed to do it with just the wave of his hand.
But this hugely successful stunt was all in a good cause, because it rounded up thousands of readers and delivered them to a charity website called Wine to Water, where they were given much better and more important news.
The reality is, the miracle machine does not exist. This is just a lump of wood.
But there is a miracle I want to talk to you about today. While we can't turn water into wine, we can turn wine into water. And the global water crisis is one of the biggest issues facing this planet today.
The motives behind stunts like that, which are becoming more and more common, are rarely so altruistic. But here's another miracle moment that captured far more true believers.
Can you turn off the lights? Come on.
Justin.
Elizabeth.
How are you?
Nice to
Shall we
meet
make
you.
out?
Absolutely.
This here is the awkward moment.
Since you're an actress, you've done this before.
A little bit.
Yes, I know you wanted more, and so did romantics all around the world who helped that video go viral. But, cute and awkward as it seemed, that 3-minute film First Kiss, which has now been viewed 80 million times online, was also just an ad. The kissers were actors, models and musicians, and the client a US clothing brand, which then got a second wave of coverage when the truth was revealed.
For C News, I'm Complex Senior Editor Foster Kamer with some disappointing news. Everyone's new favorite viral video is fake.
There are plenty of smart people in PR and advertising who dream up campaigns like this, with the aim of getting the story in print, online or on TV. Or, better still, to get it shared on social media. But there's now a growing number of people employed by social media and news sites to create content for advertisers in-house. At BuzzFeed, for example, which recently launched in Australia, they aim to raise all their revenue by dreaming up paid posts like this one for Telstra.
21 selfies you keep seeing in your feed. The animal selfie, the dentist selfie, the yoga selfie.
If you want the other 18, you know where to look. And if you want more such ads for Telstra or the Hunger Games or cider, BuzzFeed has those too. Another Australian website, this time homegrown, is junkie.com, which also relies on sponsored content for much of its revenue. Here's a story from last year that was paid for by, well, let's see if you can guess.
How to light up a Sydney Harbour Bridge. Those who live in Sydney might have noticed that the hulking mass of steel joining Milson's Point to Millers Point has been glowing in pretty dancing colours over the last week or so.
As Junkie explained, the spectacular bridge display was run by computers, powered by chips from Intel. And the big US manufacturer had not only sponsored the light show, it had also paid for the story. Or, should we say, it had inspired it, along with several others on the Junkie site. The new buzzword for this sort of editorial is native advertising. And according to Junkie's founder Tim Duggan, it involves 3 things. It has to be quality content, inspired by a brand, and be delivered in-stream. Or, to put it bluntly, it's got to be on the main site and look and feel just like the stories that surround it. Advertisers love this stuff because it works far better than banner ads, which nobody clicks on. And mainstream news sites are now being forced to follow suit.
Can you pick the stars before they were famous?
That story last November on Australia's most popular news site was written by News Corp journalists. And it looked pretty much like all the other stories. But it was actually part of a native advertising campaign for Gold Coast theme parks, one of which is Warner Brothers Movie World. 4 other stories in the campaign appeared that week, written according to news
in a style that readers enjoy, ensuring that the advertiser's brand is presented in a natural and familiar environment.
Strangely enough, those news stories were so subtle they didn't actually mention the advertiser. But each was flanked by Gold Coast theme park banner ads. Meanwhile, at the Age and Sydney Morning Herald, they've also been playing with native ads since late last year, starting with a series of stories paid for by the Commonwealth Bank. These did mention the sponsor, but had this giveaway headline, Brand Discover. And some say that's not pure native advertising because it's meant to look like everything else. But this is a game we're still learning here, and overseas they're much further down the track, as Britain's Guardian made clear in February.
The publisher of The Guardian has launched branded content division Guardian Labs, striking a £1 million plus deal with Unilever to push a sustainable living marketing message.
The new Guardian Labs works like an advertising or PR agency, but inside the British media group. It employs 133 people to create marketing campaigns for companies that go well beyond buying ads in the paper. Already, it has that £1 million deal with Unilever, which owns a huge variety of familiar household brands. And that money is buying the multinational reams of favourable coverage. Tucked away on the Guardian website is what's called a Sustainable Business Partner Zone, with 17 good news stories about what Unilever is doing in the world. The mining giant Anglo-American also gets a partner zone for its money, with even more stories about the good things that it is doing. Now, all these are labelled advertisement feature or sponsored feature. But when you come to them via the Guardian's Sustainable Living page, these native ads are surrounded by feature stories that have not been paid for. And why is that a problem? Well, we think the lines are being blurred, which of course is what advertisers want. And some critics fear they will get even blurrier.
Be warned, as the push toward native ads gains steam, the already murky distinctions between ads and non-ads will only get murkier. Not long from now, most of the paid messages you encounter online will be dressed up as unpaid messages, and figuring out which is which will be an ever more difficult task.
Despite such warnings, native ads are the new big thing, especially in the United States, where the Washington Post, New York Times, Huffington Post, Forbes, Time, Yahoo and The Atlantic have all taken the plunge. Most of them argue they have little choice, but US media critic Bob Garfield says journalism is selling its soul and getting peanuts in return. Writing in The Guardian, the host of NPR's On the Media joked that native ads are a Faustian pact that not even Faust would sign.
Selling its soul buys a sinking newspaper precious little time. That's why the Faust of the joke declines to participate. He knows that if he's going to barter his dignity, reputation and trust, there better be more in it for him than a few coins to stuff his purse.
A spectacular example of how trust can be lost is provided by The Atlantic, which went native last year with 7 pages of sponsor content for the Church of Scientology.
David Miscavige leads Scientology to milestone year. The driving force behind this unparalleled era of growth is David Miscavige, ecclesiastical leader of the Scientology religion. Mr. Miscavige is unrelenting in his work for millions of parishioners.
That shameless puff for an outfit The Atlantic would normally be tearing apart brought howls of protest and an almost instant apology, with the magazine admitting,
"We screwed up. It shouldn't have taken a wave of constructive criticism, but it has, to alert us that we've made a mistake, possibly several mistakes. We now realise that as we explored new forms of digital advertising, we failed to update the policies that must govern the decisions we make along the way."
There are some ads you just shouldn't take. And there are far more you should never dress up as news. But even Britain's public broadcaster, the BBC, is now risking its reputation by going native. The BBC has long had a separate commercial arm funded by ads called BBC Worldwide. And on its website, bbc.com, it now runs native ads described as partner content.
Putting the romance in adventure travel. Dave Buskill and Deb Kabeel during their 2012 trip to Antarctica.
Advertisement feature. American Express.
And it's not just a British or American problem. The BBC is one of the 10 most popular online news sources in Australia. And you'll be thrilled to know we'll soon be getting partner content here.
BBC looking for Australian partners for native advertising push.
The BBC admits its new move might cause fans to be concerned. And one comment below that news story certainly agreed.
A bit tricky when it's the BBC, a UK taxpayer-funded organisation. Ukraine riots sponsored by Heckler and Koch, or Pakistan coverage sponsored by Lockheed Martin. 21 best Apache helicopter attacks you never watched, brought to you by Boeing.
But fear not, the BBC has guidelines. Ads for weapons are not allowed, nor for pornography, politics or smoking. But the real question is, will we trust the BBC as much in future? BBC Worldwide's Tom Bowman says,
"This is a delicate subject, actually. So if you're sponsoring BBC editorial, then you won't be influencing what's being written."
Well, we reckon those lines are being blurred again. In the future section of the BBC site is a series of articles paid for by the Chinese electronics giant Huawei. They all look like news stories, but this one has 7 mentions of the company, its people and its products. Sure, it's labelled advertisement feature, but is that really enough? US journalism professor Jeff Jarvis, writing on his blog, is worried about the way it's all heading.
I fear that in the end we all become the Times of India, where paid advertising and news content are allegedly mixed so smoothly in some areas that readers can't tell one from the other.
But hey, who cares? Well, on BuzzFeed and Junkie, the answer may be nobody. Younger audiences don't seem to mind. But for mainstream news sites where trust is important, we think it matters. And once again, I'm reminded of the dictum that news is something that someone doesn't want printed. All the rest is advertising. But not all journalists have a problem with this brave new world. Here's former Good Weekend editor Lauren Quaintance trumpeting its arrival.
Luckily, there are literally thousands of journalists in Australia who have recently been released from the ethical shackles of major media companies, where the gulf between advertising and editorial necessarily runs deep. If brands can harness the creative power of credible, authoritative storytellers, they might just deliver better journalism than publishers themselves.
This idea of brands delivering better journalism is echoed by one of Australia's biggest banks, the ANZ, which last week launched its own online news site, Blue Notes. According to the ANZ's Amanda Gome, who's been a senior journalist and publisher, the bank will have a dozen editorial staff and its own website and much, much more.
We've got sub-editors and a publishing hub. We've got a video studio. It's really well resourced. We will also be breaking our own stories.
And maybe they will, but perhaps not stories like this one. Blue Note's managing director Andrew Cornell, who was an award-winning journalist at the Financial Review, says the new venture is the future of journalism. We wish him success, but we hope he's wrong. And we take some comfort in the thought that whatever happens, decent stories will always get an audience. So to leave you with a smile this Easter, here's another brilliant PR stunt about a man whose mates plumbed his house with beer.
What the hell? Whoa, it's like cold beer too, look.
He's going butter and butter. No way.
Oh my gosh. It actually tastes really good.
Did it come up? Here it comes.
Holy.
That video on YouTube got 4 million hits in the first 48 hours and heaps of editorial in mainstream media. Only later did it emerge that it was a native ad for a New Zealand beer made by the team at Saatchi & Saatchi. And in the interest of disclosure, we should say that Media Watch tonight has also been sponsored by you, the taxpayer. So thank you. We hope we've given you value for money. And you can read more about native ads on our website, where you can also get a transcript and download the programme. And you can catch up with us on iView and contact me or Media Watch on Twitter. But until next week, that's all from us. Goodbye.